This is Michael Woodward, and this is Season 2, Episode 63 of the Jumble Think Podcast.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Jumble Think Podcast, where we interview leading entrepreneurs about their journey of turning their dreams and ideas into reality. These dreamers, makers, innovators, and influencers will give us tips and ideas of how we can turn our own ideas and dreams into reality too. Our guest on today's episode is Jason Hsiao. More about Jason in a moment. Now let's jump into today's episode. Hey there, welcome to the Jumble Think Podcast. My name is Michael Woodward. I am your host. We have an incredible episode for you today. Before we dive in, I want to encourage you, wherever you like to listen to podcasts, head on over and click that subscribe button. If you like listening on iTunes, we've made it even easier. Just swing on over to jumblethink.com/iTunes. And for Spotify, jumblethink.com/Spotify. When you go to those links, it will take you right to the page on the app for the Jumble Think Podcast, and you can click subscribe. It's real easy. So go to jumblethink.com/iTunes or jumblethink.com/Spotify. On the podcast today, our guest is Jason Hsiao. Super excited to have him on the podcast. Jason is the co-founder and chief video officer at Animoto. Animoto is an award-winning online video maker that makes it easy for anyone to create professional quality marketing videos, even if they have no technical skills or have never created a video. Now, Jason founded Animoto with his high school and Dartmouth College friends back in 2006. Animoto's certified partnerships with Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and the Small Business Administration give it unique insights into the changing social media and business landscape. That may be why they have more than 1 million businesses around the world already using Animoto. Prior to founding Animoto, Jason was a producer at MTV Networks and Comedy Central. Hey, Jason, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Michael. Thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure.
Now, you have a company called Animoto. I want to start off and just let you paint the picture of Animoto, what it is, and what you guys do.
Alrighty. So Animoto is a video making tool on web and mobile that makes video making incredibly easy through a drag and drop interface using building blocks and starter templates that we call storyboards.
Oh, cool. So when you say that they're using starter templates, are you providing, because I've seen so many companies that are doing stuff with like stock material where you come in and you select and they put together a 10-second video, but it sounds like you guys have a bigger platform than that.
Yeah, so basically, we've been at this for about 10 years, and we've been studying literally living, breathing, sleeping, bleeding video for the last 10 years, and really understanding, everything out there and what makes for successful video and what doesn't. Right. And so kind of in all that, in all that analysis and all that study, we've started to put together storyboards based on video best practices, based on videos that have proven success. And so, but really they're just kind of a starting place, because what we find is for a lot of businesses that are just getting into video, particularly small businesses, and you're kind of staring at a blank canvas, it can be kind of intimidating. But when you start to see stuff, you're like, oh, I would love to have something like that. And so you can start with that storyboard or that template, and you can drag and drop your own content right in, and then you can start making changes to kind of make it your own. So if you want to add some more stuff, you can add more blocks. If you want to take away stuff, if you want to add text or your logo or customize your font and colors, and really kind of make it your own. But I think the big idea here is it's kind of like a toy, It's based on this builder paradigm, which we took a lot of inspiration from, actually. And I know you have a lot of experience in this world, the whole world of website building.
Right.
And you think about what's happened with website building over the last, 10 years and the emergence of all these great builders. We think that something similar is going to happen with video, where, you don't have to have expertise in video editing with, Final Cut and Premiere and all those really complicated softwares to make professional videos. And so we love this idea of just drag and drop building blocks. It's kind of like a toy. There's no way that you can kind of have a failed experience. You just drag stuff around and you always will have a great video. But what's really important for businesses too, as opposed to maybe other kind of template type softwares that out there, is you still need the flexibility to make it your own. So businesses really care about their brand and making sure their company's brand and personality and everything is really presented in the way that matches everything about them. So we try to kind of offer that balance of a great template, but the flexibility to really make it your own.
Super cool. And we're going to dive more into Animoto in our second segment, but I want to get the backstory and how Animoto started, how you got here. So for you were a producer at MTV Networks and Comedy Central. You've worked in the video space for a long time. How did for you this love of video and video creation start?
Well, the love of video started a long time. I mean, really, like since I was a kid and all the like VHS days, and for people who still remember all that stuff, beta tapes and VHS and all that. We were making. I was always making videos with my friends. In fact, I started Animoto with 3 friends from who I went to high school and college with, and so which is kind of a story in and of itself. That's not very typical, but. With a couple of these guys, I was making videos on the weekends and summers and high school and stuff. So we always just loved and believed in the power and magic of video. And so fast forward 10 years after college, 2 of us happened to be in New York working in the TV industry. So I was a producer for MTV and Comedy Central, like you said, and my friend Stevie, who's my co-founder, he was working as a documentary producer for ABC, working with all these incredibly impressive people over there.
Wow.
And so for us, that was a super exciting kind of dream that we were getting to work in TV. But what we saw was that the landscape was just outside of our little world of where our editing bays and all these professionals we were working with. What we were seeing is that the macro landscape was just changing so quickly with technology and these mobile phone things. And mind you, this is like before the iPhone came out, right? And so phones were getting smaller and smaller, and suddenly they could fit in your pocket. Suddenly you could like fold them up, and it just seemed inevitable that these things in your pocket would maybe one day have like an internet connection and maybe even a phone. And we just saw that video was going to be had to be central to all of that, and we just wanted to be a part of all of that. And at the same time, cloud computing, this whole idea of what you can do stuff in the cloud. It doesn't have to be like software on your laptop. So all this stuff was just kind of converging, and we wanted to be a part of that. And so we literally just started working on this idea of video rendering in the cloud.
Wow.
On the weekends and in the evenings and weekends. And we thought it was going to take a few months. It took us a year to prove out the technology that could actually work. And then we had to decide, we both had pretty successful careers in TV, and I was about to move to LA, and I had an agent, and I was pitching shows, and I was like, gosh, do I really want to give that up? But we just could not stop thinking about the possibilities of this whole, world of video and making video accessible to everyone. So we gave it a shot. We said, you know what? Let's quit our jobs, give ourselves a year to see if we can make this happen. And so here we are 10 years later and still growing.
That's super, super cool. So it wasn't just this whole thing of okay, now I have this cool idea and it just came together. You actually were putting a lot on the line. You were risking a lot by choosing not to continue your career and the trajectory you're on, to step out into an unknown space. For you and your friends, as you processed this idea and started building it and seeing the possibilities, how did you know that this was the idea for you that was worth taking the risk to put everything on the line and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to choose a different path. And the career thing's awesome. MTV Comedy Central has been great. Pitching shows is really cool, but I want to do something that can really change the industry.
That's a great question. I mean, and this is the kind of the behind the scenes stuff that people rarely talk about when you're trying to start a company. Is there you kind of have the practical issues of trying to get by, paying your rent and feeding yourself and stuff like that.
Right.
So especially when you're in a place like New York, you can't just say, okay, well, yeah, I don't need an income. I'll just start this crazy idea and see what happens.
Not the cheapest place in town.
Yeah. So it's the sexy story is find something you're passionate about, follow your dreams, blah, blah, blah. And those can be very inspiring. But then you sit down and you're like, okay, so how do I do this? So for us, you're right. We were basically, like kind of 28, 29, 30, so we weren't just like out of college where we had nothing to lose. We were, established careers in New York and, paying skyrocket rents and, also had significant others, so that's kind of another issue. So how do you kind of start something from scratch responsibly? So the way that we did it is we knew that first of all, we didn't even know if this idea would be technically possible. Because what we decided is that this whole cloud computing thing was kind of coming along, and that for this to really be able to scale in a way that could, we figured out initially like, oh, great. So if one person wants to do this, we can handle this because we had a server in our closet and this is great. Then we're like, what happens if 5 people want to do this at the same time, or 10 people? We'd be screwed. They'd be waiting 10 hours to get their video running. So this idea of and the potential of cloud computing and thus kind of our relationship with Amazon, because they offer a bunch of cloud computing services, really intrigued us. And so it took a long time to really figure out how video could be rendered, because we're talking about rendering 30 frames a second of video, in the cloud, and it was something that no one had ever done.
Well, and if anyone knows anything about video, you look at Pixar and they're creating, CG based graphics and stuff, but most of these big shops that are doing video production, they have some major CPU at the local level, whether it's a rendering farm, whether it's just a souped up iMac or Mac Pro or whatever, that they're really able to facilitate the requirements of that. And so with people coming in and out and using it as an on-demand service, that must be pretty intensive to be able to handle the load requests, because you may get a moment where 100 people are rendering, you may get a moment where 2 people are rendering and creating. And so in this process of creating this tool, you and it sounds like your friends all come from video worlds, but there's a lot of development back end. So how did you navigate that process of developing something that's probably outside of your wheelhouse while applying the knowledge and the strengths that you have from years of experience in the industry? How did you marry all that together and begin to create something that was sustainable, like you were talking about?
Well, I think part of my secret is I happen to find a co-founder who is a total genius.
Okay.
And so my friend Stevie, I have to give him credit. He is the technical genius. He is incredibly smart. I think where we leverage some of our experience in television and film is that we really understood that there's a lot of nuance of what makes stuff looks professional, and specifically the magic of when you can apply motion design and music and orchestrate everything in the right way. Television is very much where it's a combination of so many different mediums that, you have audio, visual, text, storytelling, people, and lighting. And so when all these things come together in just the right way, it very much is one of these, 1 + 1 = 3 type things.
Right.
And so we put a lot of attention to very specifics of, for example, motion design and, the 20 different ways that you can calculate motion blur so that it actually looks, professional versus like, maybe something just moving across the screen like in a PowerPoint presentation, which looks kind of, cheesy or phony.
Yeah.
So all this was very computationally intense. Half of it was leveraging our experience in television. Half of it was literally opening up, like physics books and teaching a lot of this stuff to ourselves. And then, we had the luxury of working with some folks at Amazon too, because they too were, this was all new territory for them.
Right.
A lot of people were starting to use the cloud, experimenting with stuff like storing, files in the cloud, like images and stuff like that. But we were trying to, we were getting into like computational, rendering. So not to totally nerd out, but it was pretty exciting just to be doing all this stuff that no one else was doing. And then, really, kind of fast forward, once we got to the point where we knew this was technically possible and we were starting to render videos in the cloud. And, what also excited us, though at the time it was really frustrating, is it took a lot longer for us to figure out whether this could work. Why that was important for us is we knew that it would be really difficult for others to try to kind of copy what we do.
Yeah.
So that gave us just a lot of confidence in the fact that, Amazon was, partnering with us. And then as we got going and we started to kind of, put this out there, we started to see a lot more people using it than we kind of ever dreamed. We actually didn't really know who might start using this.
Right.
And really a lot of people started using this. And so along the way, it was all very, it wasn't quite as, just quit our jobs and jump in leap of faith. There was a lot of work behind the scenes. We gave up, a couple years of social. Well, I mean, I'd say still don't have a social life, but we in the beginning we definitely we're just working evenings and weekends trying to prove this out to a point. And in part, why that's important too is when you're starting to go out and raise money, as as we did in the early days to kind of get our first couple years off the ground. They want, people out there that are investing, they want to see that you have, kind of a proven technology or proven track record of something. So we knew that this would go a long way in terms of us being able to successfully, raise some money to get us through our first few years and our first few hires and stuff like that. So those are kind of maybe not so sexy, but more of the kind of the real story of how, how things got started. And then also along that time, we were just saving some money. And when we decided to actually quit our jobs, we all decided to put in a chunk of kind of a central pool of money and then pay ourselves back out that money. It was just almost kind of just like a way to make sure everything was fair and that no one was starving, that they were actually getting, like a very minimal kind of a, like almost like a faux salary, but just to make sure that everyone was on the same, being fed, paying their rent, and didn't have to worry about that for, a year. So those are some of the kind of like the logistical things, but the big idea really really fueled us. We were so excited about the possibilities. And so ultimately that's, for all the many, many times where we thought this was not going to be possible, it was just kind of like the big idea that kept driving us forward.
Super, super cool. And I think it's important that more people tell their stories with authenticity about their startup journey, because I think there's a lot of fantasy and romanticizing of the startup journey. And there are a lot of cool things about being a startup and going through that process, but it's not always what people paint it to be or expect it to be. And to hear someone telling the story and being like, yeah, it's worth it. But it was a very, it was a hard journey. It wasn't just, it just came to us and all of a sudden we're billionaires. It was a lot of work and a lot of risk and a lot of sacrifice.
Exactly. There was a lot of points of doubt along the way. And then, and then just many questions of like, hey, can we do this while still trying to live in New York and have significant others? And, and so there was definitely a lot of challenges, but, ultimately, like you said, it is that excitement for the big idea and for doing something that you think might change the world, if even in a small way, that if you believe in it, you really need that kind of core belief to get you through some of those tougher times or the points where you might have some doubt. So
for you in this journey with Animoto, how have you guys, maybe you specifically or the team at the larger scale, how are you guys finding significance and purpose in what you're doing? Because a lot of times in the startup world or in the business world, having that purpose, having that mission to drive you forward helps you know why you're on that journey. So for you, how are you finding significance and purpose?
That's a great question, and that's certainly been an evolution along, during our years. And I'd say something that we're still kind of growing into.
Yeah,
I'd say in the beginning, if you can't tell from the way that I kind of described our early years, we were total just product and technology nerd. We were so obsessed with like how cool the techno. I mean, we were doing really cool, not just rendering stuff in the clouds. We were like analyzing music and perfectly orchestrating stuff to the very nuances of the music, and we got patents for all this really cool stuff. So we were, I mean, and we literally like locked ourselves in a room for a couple of years and just built amazingly cool stuff. So it turns out half the stuff that we made, people don't actually care about. So there's kind of one lesson, but I think it's not uncommon. So as much as we talked about passion and interest and excitement for what you're doing, it's not uncommon, I think, for some folks to be maybe too innerly focused on their idea.
Right.
And so this whole idea of being genuinely, customer focused, which I know is a totally overused, almost cliche term these days, was really kind of a journey for us. And if I was to be, transparent here, the first several years, I would say, were almost like faux success because we had so many different people using Animoto, which at first seemed so exciting to us. But what we kind of started to realize is, when you have a lot of people kind of using you, it kind of means you're just okay at a lot of things, but you're not really great for anyone.
Yeah.
And we really felt that tension internally as we grew too, because when you're getting, all sorts of feature requests by all these different people, and you start to build this product that's trying to be kind of, great for a lot of people, and it really kind of became like this Frankenstein patchwork quilt of a product, and not just from a feature level, but from a technology stack level. And it became, I guess, if I was to admit this, that early product was kind of a mess because we were trying to serve, I think, too many people, and we really didn't have that sense of purpose.
It's that
or
old saying of jack of all trades, master of none. You guys were doing so many things that nothing really excelled. Everything was just kind of average.
Exactly. So when you talk about purpose, I think maybe in the early days, we kind of checked a few boxes in terms of, we got patents, we started a company, and that's all really exciting. But when you're talking about purpose in terms of how am I making a difference in other people's lives, and making making things easier for someone or changing the world in some way, it really requires having to get in the shoes of someone very specific and really understand their world.
Yeah.
So halfway through our journey, we had to, I think we just decided, what, we would rather be best in the world at one specific thing than trying to be kind of good at like 20 different things. I mean, we had people, in terms of like people creating videos, really it was anyone who had photos and music, or, so it was travelers, moms, dads, churches, nonprofits, schools, students, businesses, marketers, photographers. So it seemed exciting because, like, who wouldn't want all these different people using your product? But for us, it was that lack of focus was really starting to kind of weigh us down. And so this idea of, what if we decided we wanted to be best in the world at one thing? What if every single person in the company was pointed in the exact same direction and working towards the same purpose? How much more could we accomplish? How much faster could we move? And so that was a big kind of, I think, growing up point. That was kind of like when we suddenly went through puberty as a startup, and started to kind of grow up a bit and kind of understand, okay, there's more to this than just getting patents and building cool technology.
Super, super cool. So in this process right now, what's one challenge that you're currently working to overcome in the business?
Great question. So the cool thing is, as part of that transition, where we decided to get laser focused, what we decided is that where we saw the biggest market opportunity and where we could make the biggest difference is helping small businesses embrace video and help grow their business. Really focused on small businesses and small business owners. And in part, that just felt great because we too, come from that world. And so there is a lot that we can relate to. And we just see the power of video and how much it can make a difference in for a business. And so we really wanted to be able to offer that gift of video to businesses. And the market opportunity just seemed like a giant wave coming. And so we really wanted to embrace that. So, so really I kind of talked about how we had a bit of a Frankensteinian product. We actually kind of set out to build a whole new product from scratch.
Oh,
wow. And we kind of, this might sound cheesy, but we were like, if we woke up one day and some other person, created something, what would that product look like that we would just cry about because we're like, that's what we should have, So it was kind of like what we kind of set out to build the product that we thought would disrupt us,
right?
Which was kind of cool to think about. So we carved off a team. Again, this is like that stuff that people don't actually talk about. So to do it responsibly, we carved off a team of rock star product folks and engineers, and we built kind of like that future video making product, the product that we talked about, the video builder based on building blocks and storyboards. And again, we thought it was going to take us like a year. It took us 2 years. So a lot went into it, but I think to your question now of that challenge. So we were like, great, now we have 2 products and we're charging the same thing. Everyone's going to love us because two is better than one.
Right.
Well, as it turns out, when we kind of launched both products, so the product was undoubtedly awesome, but where there's a lot of confusion was, well, what's the difference between this and that other product? Yeah. And we know underneath the hood, it's completely different, but there's a lot of overlap. And, so I think one of the challenges now is really making sure that people understand what the difference is, and maybe even trying to understand, like, well, what do we do with kind of our flagship or our legacy product? So that's something we're wrestling with real time. And yeah, I think, maybe just more big picture, video is just this whole world of social media actually is just a super fast changing landscape.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Like 2 years ago, people were all talking about, I don't know, like Pinterest and Twitter. And last year, everyone's talking about Snapchat. And this year, everyone is talking about Instagram.
Yeah.
So the cool thing is why it's great to be a part of video is it seems like video really transcends whatever that flavor of the month is. But for us, it's the challenge is making sure that we understand not just what the trends are today, but that we understand where things are going and that we're building something that can really transcend. That's not kind of just built for something specific today that might happen to be a trend today. We're building something robust enough that it will be awesome, not just today but for whatever happens to be the social platform of the year next year and the year after that and the year after that, and however things change. Super cool.
What's the next big goal you have right now that you are really excited about?
Well, I think without giving away too much, but we have a lot of exciting stuff in the works. A big, I guess, related to what I said, where we see a lot of traction right now is with this concept of stories, which you see a lot in like Instagram and Facebook, and it's kind of a more vertical format. And even some folks have said like maybe the newsfeed will go away because it seems like there's a big shift towards stories. So it's a different type of kind of a visual format. It's a bit more interactive. It's a bit more I guess as stories implies a bit more storytelling, has more kind of storytelling possibilities. It's pretty exciting. But it's a bit different in terms of, how would you create, a product that supports stories. There's a lot of different things to consider. The cool thing, though, is that it really does seem like it's still the Wild West of possibilities. And so the exciting part is not just kind of trying to figure out what's happening today, like I said, but, what could the possibilities be in the next year or two with regards to stories. So, I probably already said too much, but that's what we're thinking a lot about, and it's pretty exciting stuff because I think we really are still kind of on the tip of the iceberg of what's possible with video.
Super, super cool. We'll be back with Jason Hsiao and part 2 of our interview, all about Animoto. The passion of the Jumblethink team is to help dreamers, makers, innovators, and influencers take their message, take their idea, and take their dream and make it into reality. One of the ways we do that is through the Jumblethink podcast, but another way we do it is through the free guides you can find at jumblethink.com/guide. We are super excited to announce that we are releasing a brand new guide called The Dreamer's Method to Micro Experiments. This guide is based off of our episode that we just released last week called The Dreamer's Method to Micro Experiments. So swing on over to jumblethinq.com/guide, check out that guide and also our other 2 free guides, Overcoming the Unknown and How to Know You've Found Your Dream. They're completely free, so swing on over to jumblethinq.com/guide to download your free guides. Now let's jump back into today's episode with Jason Hsiao. Now, Jason, in the first segment, you started talking about this pivot that you guys have been making over the last couple of years and rebuilding the application from the ground up, which is super cool that you said, hey, you know what? We've done good at a wide net, but let's build a better net for the right audience to really utilize this tool. So let's start off by just identifying who is the perfect candidate for this tool and how they could utilize it for what they're doing.
Yeah, so I think video undoubtedly is kind of changing everything right now. You just see video everywhere, and there's all sorts of now like stats and studies about how video improves this and that. But I think really the punchline is that the reason why video is performing better than everything else is because, quite simply, video is how a lot of folks prefer to consume their kind of content and information these days. And so as businesses, what we have to learn is to try to tailor how we are communicating our content and our information and our message in a way that people want to consume that.
Right.
And so, video is one of those emerging ways. It's not to say that everything else is going away, but video is emerging as just as important as all, as many of the other traditional ways. And so businesses have to learn to communicate with video. As we kind of say, video is kind of like speaking a language. You have to learn to speak video. And but the challenging thing is, so you see video everywhere, but it's mostly today still a lot of the very big companies with big resources or with big creative teams or access to big marketing or creative agencies getting to do all of the real professional videos. But businesses, small businesses, and marketers at smaller businesses, they know they should be part of this video wave, but they just don't know how. They don't have video experience. They might not have these giant budgets that these other companies do, and so they're kind of struggling with like, well, how do I get started? I can clearly see videos everywhere. I should be a part of this, but I don't know how. So that's really kind of where we step in and we say, listen, you don't have to have any video experience. You don't have to have these ridiculous, marketing budgets. You don't have to go out and hire, expensive creative firms or marketing agencies to do this for you. You can do video yourself.
Right.
And so we start explaining the tool and stuff like that, and drag and drop building blocks. And when people start seeing, the cool thing for us is, as soon as people kind of start seeing this kind of drag and drop building block interface, people kind of light up, because I think it's a paradigm they're very familiar with. It started way back with just like photo albums.
Right. Yeah.
So it's an interface paradigm that I think a lot of people, if you see it, you're like, oh, cool, I recognize that, I can do that. Versus, like a typical Final Cut timeline, editor timeline with, all these different tracks that looks very intimidating. And then when you see people start to make their first video, and their eyes light up, for me, that's just like the magic moment. That's kind of what we live for, is people are like, wow, wait, I created that, and just that sense of like, wow, that confidence. But it's a big hurdle to get to, kind of having no confidence, no experience, I've never done this, to getting people to have that kind of confidence to make that first video. So really, that's kind of what we're really focused on, is kind of showing people, yes, you actually can make these amazing videos. And the reason, right, is, again, video is changing, but it really is, video really is one of the best ways to stand out on social media, to get people talking about your business, to communicate stuff in a way that that people out there want to consume their content. And it's, and by the numbers, there's all sorts of stats about how people, remember stuff more when they see it in video, or, click-throughs, or, if you have videos like included in your emails, or your, your website, everything performs better. So there's all sorts of kind of numerical evidence, quantitative evidence that shows how video helps perform things better. But really, the core of it, right, is just because people are interested in video and they love watching videos, and the play button is, perhaps the most compelling call to action there is, out on social media. So that's really kind of our sweet spot. Is we would love if every small business, small entrepreneur, marketer out there was feeling confident that they were just creating videos all the time to communicate with their audience.
So let's go a little bit deeper into that and really define what a user is going to experience. So let's say I'm that ideal small business owner and I've got a busy life. I'm running a business. I'm doing all this stuff with just producing or serving my customers in whatever way that looks for me. And I know that I want to do a video, but maybe I don't have a budget for it because I'm a newer business and I'm in a small town and I'm just trying to start up. And so they come in and they say, okay, this looks like a cool tool. I'm going to start using it for my Facebook feeds. I'm going to use it for my Insta stories. I'm going to utilize it in different ways. What is the process when they open up the website, when they open up the app for video creation? Are they only utilizing their video, their content? Is there a repository of stock information there? And then how do they really begin to compile and create a narrative? Because having video is one thing. Having a good video, having a great resource that demonstrates, like you said before, a reflection of your brand. How is that person who doesn't know anything about video really going to get in there and create something that just looks killer at the end?
That's a great question. In fact, that's probably kind of the core of the thing that I hear all the time and just talking to businesses. They're like, okay, cool. I get it. I get that video is changing everything. I get that video is really effective. I get your tool looks great, looks super simple, but like if I was to kind of synthesize the one question I hear all the time, it's like, how do I get started? And there's kind of like this nervousness in their eyes, or like, I have no idea where to start, and it looks easy, but like, what should I do first? So there's a couple things I say to kind of get people at least in the right kind of mental mode. So one is that video really isn't a whole new type of marketing. I think people they're like, oh, I just got my website up and I'm trying to figure out this email thing, and SEO. Someone is trying to explain SEO and SEM, and now you're telling me I need to learn video. But here's the thing: is I think the best way to think about video is it's not a whole new type of marketing. It really is a way to amplify your existing marketing, or it's a way to amplify whatever it is that already works for you, and that's a fantastic starting point. So specifically, for example, if you have a certain set of photos that you already use to kind of debut your new fashion line, or your new set of products, or your new coffee beans, or whatever it is that and you're already kind of putting that on your site, or putting it in a email newsletter, you can take those photos and create a video, and like I said, augment whatever it is that you're already doing, amplify what it is that you're already doing with what you already have. So a few examples come to mind. I know that Crate and Barrel used Animoto sometime last year, and they create these beautiful product catalogs that I think it's like twice a year, and they were trying to figure out, well, we have all these great photos that we already kind of create twice a year, and for the spring catalog we would love to have some videos on social media. And I think they went out and got some quotes and it was going to take like 4 weeks and cost like, I don't know, 6 figures, and they're just like, wait, this sounds kind of just, well, what if we use Animoto? And so they could turn a video around in a day and save all that money and put it actually towards marketing that video or advertising that video. And so for them, this is just a great example of taking something that you already have and amplifying what already works, which for them are these beautiful catalog photos that they release every other season, and put that in a video. Another great example is one of our kind of friend companies, Buffer. They do great social media tools for businesses. So they're not only known for great social media tools, but they do amazing. They have just amazing content that they put out on their blog, like all these great studies and analyses, and they'll do all sorts of interesting surveys and insights, and it's exceptional. So they're like, well, how do we get into video? So they started taking. So what's cool is they could just take all their blog posts and just sort by what's the most popular. So they could at least start with the ones they knew that their audience resonate with most. And they're like, okay, well, let's start taking some of this and trying to put it into a video. And so for some of the, for some of the content where it was pretty synthesized and it was like the 5 ways to do X, Y, Z, the 5 things we learned, they could actually create a whole video about kind of like that's almost like summarizing those learnings. And for other blog posts that might be a bit more intense in terms of the findings or the study, they kind of create almost like a teaser. Kind of saying like, here's a couple of things we learned. To learn more, click here. Similarly, I've seen, a lot of folks who do audio content like podcasts also starting to use videos as teasers. They're saying, here's a little great tidbit or soundbite from one of my guests. To hear the whole thing, swipe up or click here. So again, just back to the point of think about what already works for you and use video to support that or tease that or to amplify that. And that's just a great place to start. And so typically when I say that, the anxieties kind of start to go down a little bit. The confidence starts to go up a little bit. And they're like, okay, cool. Yeah, I can think of that, some of the things I already have or that are on my site, or especially if you're like, anything that has anything visual, like if you're in hospitality or you're in real estate or if you're a photographer, you already have kind of the unfair advantage of having all this great visual content. So start there and put that in a video. And that's just a great way to get started. So start with what already works, start with what you have. And from there, I think once you create your first video, it's like your confidence just shoots up and you're like, oh, that was that easy. I can do this all the time.
Yeah. So for a lot of people, they're going to be going, I don't know if I have a lot of time for this. And when I think of all the video people I've worked with, and I've worked with a lot of people with our customers, video production seems like it takes forever to do. And it probably does for a high-level video that an agency's putting together with storyboarding and with creative and going out with a whole crew to shoot it and then editing it and all that kind of stuff. For your product, for Animoto, how long does it take to take the assets that you already have and begin to assemble a story and create a finished product?
I mean, literally, you could create a video in a couple minutes.
Oh, wow.
One thing to think about, I think, to remind folks is on social media especially. I mean, maybe something that's longer form on YouTube or on your site might be if you're trying to create something a little bit more in-depth, like a how-to video or something like that about your company. But for a lot of these videos on social media, they're pretty short, right? 15, 20 seconds. And it doesn't take that much content or that many words, to create an interesting, short and punchy video on social media. So, you don't need to have 50 images or 100 video clips to make. You can have 2 or 3 images and supplement that with a few text blocks and insert your logo, and you're all set. Some folks even create video if you don't even have any images. There's a lot of folks that create just text videos. They're creating top 5 ways to do this, or my 5 popular ice cream flavors this week, or whatever it is. So it doesn't actually have to even include any images or video clips. But so with Animoto, like I said, you have all these great storyboards. So if you don't know where to start, you can just kind of scroll through, pick something that seems interesting to you, open that up, and sometimes there's just a few blocks, a few images to just replace, and you can change the text, and then you kind of replace the logo. And it can be that simple. It can kind of be as much or as little as you want to put into it. But the whole idea of storyboards is to just take something off the shelf, make it your own, make a few tweaks, and then you're off to the races. So I would literally say you could create a video in less than 5 minutes if you just want to get started with a short video. And then from there, once you know how it works, if you want to create something longer or more involved, great. But most videos don't take more than I'd say 10 or 15 minutes to make for these type of these type of videos that you see on social. Now, if you're creating something that's going to go on your homepage of your website or something like that, you might want to take a bit more time and maybe shoot some specific stuff. I also like to say, the phone that you have in your pocket is the most powerful camera out there. Your iPhone or your Android device probably has a better camera on it than a lot of cameras out there. So you can shoot stuff with your phone. You can grab someone in your company, or if you are the business owner or the founder or the creator or whatever, say a few things on camera, and that creates a great video too. So lots of ways to both kind of get started and to kind of create subsequent videos after your first one.
Super, super cool. It kind of reminds me of, in the graphic design space, a tool called Canva that's out there. Yes. It's super cool. I mean, I live in Photoshop a lot of days. I work with it quite a bit, but if I need something that I need to grab and go, grab a template, get it done, and get it out the door for Jumblethink or something like that, I'll often use Canva just because of convenience of it and not having to think of the creative idea and everything like that. Just using a template, plugging in my collateral.
Totally. We love Canva, and they are also a huge inspiration for us. But exactly a very similar concept in terms of like starting with something that already looks amazing and great, and all you have to do is kind of swap in a couple things, maybe change the text, and boom, you're done. And with Canva, you can have it literally right in just a couple minutes, because you're just placing a few things. You can have something that looks amazing. So love Canva, love what they're doing, and they're definitely in fact, a lot of people, for those that do know Canva, a lot of folks describe Animoto as like the Canva of video or something like that. So that's definitely a compliment for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you described it, that's exactly what it felt like for me is the video version of Canva. Not version, but they could be siblings doing different things. So
yeah. And the cool thing with Animoto too is, you can also just start from scratch. Yeah. So that's kind of one difference. Is because it's a building block concept, and you have image blocks, video blocks, text blocks, and we're going to have future different types of blocks in the near future. But you can once you've kind of made a few videos with storyboards and you want to kind of make something that you specifically have in mind, you can also kind of start from scratch if you want to do something that's like, oh, we have these great customer testimonials and it doesn't seem to fit any one of you. You can drag those in, maybe complement it with something that your CEO says, or your boss says, and, and then put your and so you can also just do something from scratch, and so that's great too.
Super, super cool. Now, is this a tool that people are only using on laptops and desktops, or can they use it on tablet or on their phone? How can they utilize this tool? Where are they needing to go to do that?
So primarily, this new product that we talked about, the video builder, the video marketing builder, is on desktop. We have our legacy product on mobile, and I'm trying to decide how much I'm allowed to talk about. Let's just say we have a lot in the works, and maybe even by the time this comes out, we may have some more news to share. Man, that was like I'm not good at keeping secrets here. Huh? But we have some exciting stuff in the works, and I already talked about the huge wave of stories in Instagram. So it probably is not hard to put together pieces. Hopefully, I don't get in trouble sharing everything I did. But it's going to be exciting. If you follow us over the next few months, we're going to have a lot of exciting news.
Now, how can people find you? How much does it cost to use your tool, and how can they connect further?
So we have several different plans, I guess, to answer your question about how much it costs. There is a free trial, so you can try it out for free. And there's various plans that are as inexpensive as like $15 a month to the pro plan, which is probably the one that I'd recommend, is like $30 a month. And then there's like an annual plan for like $269 a year. But in terms of how to get in touch, animoto.com/jumblethink, and I'll put all my contact information there and some links to everything that we cover about if you're just trying to figure out how to get started, a few kind of helpful resources or downloads. But I would, if any folks out there are trying to figure out how to get into video, or trying to figure out how to take, their video marketing or content marketing to the next level, I would be more than happy to chat. So don't be shy about getting in touch and asking any and all questions about video. I love talking to folks out there and hearing about what they're doing. Again, because I'm one of you all, right? I'm a someone with an idea, big dream, and I wanted to make it happen. And so I just love connecting with other entrepreneurs and business owners out there and helping them make their business successful. So don't be shy. I'll create a site, animoto.com/jumblethink, all my contact information, some great links to help you get started, and anything else I can think of between now and when this goes out, I'll put up on that page.
Super, super cool. In a moment, we'll be back with Jason Hsiao and our rapid fire questions. We have exciting news at Jumblethink. At the end of September, we're launching our second podcast called The B-Side, and we want you to be part of it. Not only will you be able to check out the podcast episodes on iTunes, Spotify, iHeart, Google Podcasts, YouTube, and all the other great places you listen to podcasts, but you'll also be able to join the conversation as we record the episodes live on Facebook Live. So are you ready to join the conversation and become part of the B-Side episodes? Here's what you need to do. Swing on over to facebook.com/jumblethink and add us as a friend. Then when we go live, join the conversation, ask your questions, and hear the amazing responses from our guests, and you'll be part of the B-Side. We can't wait for you to become part of the conversation. Now let's join our rapid fire questions with Jason Hsiao. We are back with Jason Hsiao and Animoto for our rapid fire questions. Jason, are you ready?
I think I'm ready. It makes me nervous, but I will do my best here.
Okay, so the first question is, what is one tip you would give someone with a big idea or dream and they don't know where to start?
I would say I highly recommend finding a partner or co-founder or a colleague or partner in having someone that you can rely on, exchange ideas with, bounce things off with, that you can be in it together, be accountable to each other, support each other. I think that's probably one of the most important things I would recommend to getting something started. Finding someone that you trust, that you think is dependable, that you could see yourselves working together with, locked in a room together for the next 10 years, like number one.
Super cool. What is one change you would like to see in the world?
I think that oftentimes there's a lot of, and this is not just in business, or this is kind of all over, there's a lot of people love to get into discussions and debate. And oftentimes, and I love that, and I think that's great. The differences of ideas is fantastic, and it's really important to make sure there's always a diverse collection of ideas and thoughts and perspectives. But what I think is kind of destructive or not helpful is when people are doing a lot of talking and not a lot of listening. And so whether it is in a meeting with a company, or in a relationship, or with friends, or on social media, I would love to just see people doing as much genuine listening as they are talking. Because I think oftentimes there's maybe not as much difference. I think people love to paint things as black and white, but I think oftentimes there's more common ground than folks might think. And I think also there's a tendency to make things overly personal. And I think just because, my friend and I, or my colleague and I, or my coworker and I, or my relative and I might have a difference of opinion doesn't mean that they're an evil person. So I think making things unnecessarily personal and all this negativity, I would love to see all that going away. And I love the exchange of ideas. I love discussion. I love debate. But let's listen too. And let's not make it personal. Let's just have a dialogue.
What do you want your legacy to be?
Great question. My entire life has really revolved around video, not just at Animoto, but in my TV career, and even just growing up making videos.
Yeah.
And I just the magic of video to me is so powerful that my life. I mean, if on my gravestone had said, help everyone in the world speak video, where people can all just get to embrace and and experience the magic of video. Uh, to me, that's just my dream. I just love video and want to give everyone the opportunity to use it.
Where do you find inspiration?
I interesting. I talk to a lot of folks at other, startups and other tech companies and stuff. And interestingly, I find that the folks that I learn the most from are the ones that didn't have just a straight shot to success, that have had all sorts of ups and downs, because those are the ones that have had to really roll up their sleeves, do some hard thinking, work things out, sometimes learn things the hard way. And I learn so much more from those folks. And so specifically, I remember when we started Animoto, I read one book. It was called Delivering Happiness, I believe, by Tony Hsiao, who's like the founder of Zappos.
Yeah.
And prior to Zappos, he started some company, I think it was called like LinkedIn. And after like 3 years, it sold for like $250 million. We're like, yeah, that's the dream, right? But he talked about in the book how he hated it. He hated going to work. I was like, wait, how can this be? This is your company. Why don't you just change something? And it was just all about, you hired the wrong, very toxic political people and bad culture, and also learned so many things from that. But that always stuck with me. And I just, I think just like Tony Hsiao's story, like so many folks I talk to, I draw a lot of inspiration from people who've gone through the blood, sweat, and tears like I have. And so look for those folks. It's not just the people who are like, yep, I had a straight shot to success, because sometimes they didn't have to learn anything.
Wow, that's powerful. What is one book you think every dreamer or entrepreneur should read, and why?
Well, I did mention that, just as a source of inspiration, I love that Delivering Happiness book. But I think there's actually 2 books right now that we made almost everyone at the company here read. Actually, no, everyone at the company here read, which have been amazing for us. One is called Radical Candor, and it's basically about creating a culture of being candid in helpful ways. And the other is called The Advantage, which is about basically like the importance of organizational health and company focus, which are some themes that I've touched on during this. Both those books have been, other books you read are very inspirational and thought-provoking, but these 2 have been very practical, very action-oriented, and have really made visible differences for us. I highly recommend those 2 books, Radical Candor and The Advantage.
What is one tool that is significant for the success of your business?
Let's see. Interesting. One tool. So I'm actually going to say this is not a tool in the sense of like a software or application.
Yeah.
But we use this framework, which maybe is closer to, called OKRs, which is objectives and key results. And every year and every quarter, we set objectives like goals, and then key results are how do you measure, how do you know whether you were successful? And we didn't always do this, but in the last several years that we have, again, that tool, that framework has been incredibly useful for us. And I think it doesn't matter whether you are a solopreneur, one person, or you're a company of thousands of people. I think even Google uses this, so it's a very common tool. And I think sometimes we're like, well, I don't know what my goals should be, or what, I've never done this before. And I always just say, like, it doesn't matter. It's you need to start somewhere. And there's a great quote from one of my childhood heroes, Bruce Lee, who said, a goal is not always meant to be reached. It often serves simply as something to aim at.
Yeah.
So just having that framework and having a common purpose and point of view and direction, it has been extraordinarily powerful for us.
What's one habit that is helpful in your life as an entrepreneur?
I find, not just for me personally, but in everyone we hire and the people I surround myself with, I think the most important habit is to make sure you are dependable and reliable, that you are not above any small thing, that if you say you're going to get something done, you are a person of your word, that you are trustworthy, that you are, because the fact is, if people can trust you with the small things, they'll quickly trust you with the big things. And at the end of the day, that's, especially if you have a big idea and you're trying to get something done, that any big idea is made up of lots of small things, most of which are not very sexy things to have to do. And so how you approach those small things really define, everything else. So I'd say be reliable, be dependable. That's the most important habit that you have to develop. If you say you're going to do something, get it done.
How do you start and finish your day?
Great question. For me, the thing I'm working on most personally is to be present. I am famous for kind of being one of these people where you can just tell in the conversation I am thinking of 10,000 other things at the same time. So I start my day on my subway ride, really trying to get focused on my day, thinking about what are the one or two most important things I need to get done, just clearing my head. So by the time I get to work, I know exactly what the one or two most important things are. This is not unique to me. I know other folks do that, but for me, it really helps to come into work focused with exactly the one or two most important things I need to get done. And then, as outside of work, I have, a wife and 2 daughters. And when on my way home, I need to figure out how to get work off my mind. So by the time I get home and for the, limited minutes I have to see my wife and kids before, the day ends, is to be present for them. I have to figure out how to unwind and get work off my mind. And so I listen to podcasts, I read books, and that has just helped tremendously. So I kind of leave the stress of work at home. I leave the stress of work at work. I can be home, be present, and that's helped. I've only started doing that, maybe in the last year or so. That's helped me tremendously.
Now, for you, if you weren't doing what you're doing today, what do you think you'd be doing?
I honestly cannot imagine doing anything else than I'm doing right now. I would probably honestly be some other type of startup. I love thinking of ideas. Sometimes I think that one of the best ways to just kind of think of crazy ideas is to kind of imagine 10 years from now and say, remember the time when X, Y, and Z? Because today we can do that with all sorts of things. Remember the time when I had to, walk 10 blocks to Blockbuster to check out that new disc of 24 so I could keep binge watching, Kiefer Sutherland. So I love just kind of like thinking about what ifs, but inevitably it would probably be some other startup. But I just love small business startups and bringing ideas to life.
What is one dream you're still wanting to fulfill in your own life?
Great question. One dream I have for both me and the folks around me is I'm really obsessed with this idea of potential. And I, both, kind of individually for myself and for my team and for my family, for everyone around me, is whatever I can do to help folks reach their full potential. There's something about that just really motivates me. And so when I start seeing people have, less confidence than they should, or doubting themselves, I love nothing more than seeing people reach their full potential, and that makes me so happy when I see that happen in the folks around me.
Super, super cool. Love that for sure. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to leave you with a moment to give us a final thought. So what is your final thought for us today?
Everyone out there has big ideas. And it doesn't have to be a big idea, in terms of like starting new. It can be a big idea within your own company. Those big ideas only happen when you start breaking those down into smaller actionable pieces. So it's really understanding, well, what's the first thing I need to get done to make this happen? It's, like I said before, surrounding yourselves with dependable, reliable people you can trust, taking it day by day. And of course, with any idea, any job, any industry, not everything is going to be fun or sexy. Every job, even starting a new company, which, as amazing as that may sound, there's a lot of difficult parts to it. And it's just remembering that how you embrace the small things define what's going to happen with the big picture. So it doesn't matter how crappy that task may be, embrace it with your heart, your full self. And if you do that with every small step, I believe that you will be bound for success.
Jason, it's been a lot of fun having you on the podcast. Thanks for taking time out, sharing your story, sharing about Animoto and what you guys are creating, and giving us some insights into the startup world that I think so many people don't know. And to hear those stories, I think will really encourage them on their journey.
Thanks, Michael, and congratulations on the success with this show. It's been a real pleasure, and I hope something in my stories helps inspire someone out there.
Once again, we want to thank Jason Hsiao for taking time out and being on the podcast today. If you want to learn more about Jason or connect with him further, make sure to check out the episode notes or swing on over to animoto.com/jumblethink. I hope you loved today's episode. If you did, here are a few past episodes with incredible guests, just like Jason, that you may connect with. In Season 1, Episode 6, our good friend Stephen Chalet, who is a video producer, he's worked on documentaries, commercials for major corporations, and so much more. He was on and sharing on the world of creating story and how to communicate story through video. It's a super cool episode. In Season 2, Episode 10, Chris Daly was on, and he shared about giving your audience what they want. And then in Season 2, Episode 59, our guest is Cody Warner. He's a vlogger creating some really cool content. These are all amazing episodes that I think will really encourage you in that journey of using video or telling story for your business, for your entrepreneurial journey. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to encourage you to make your dream and idea a reality. It's a scary journey and often filled with obstacles, but it's a journey worth taking. So begin to think, what are some micro experiments that you can run? And then make those things happen. Or who can I talk to help encourage me in that dream or give me some tips in making that a reality? No matter what, today is a great day to start making those dreams and ideas a reality. So get out there, do something, whether it's a big something or a small something, do something to make those dreams a reality. Until next time, make sure you get out there, dream big, and change the world around you.
Les mères de famille, les enfants peuvent également prendre un moment revitalisant. Dans quelques mois, lorsque vous aurez bien saisi la technique et que vous serez maître de votre corps, vous pourrez vous décontracter même en travaillant.